Subscribe to The Honest Critique for current affairs, movie, book, and product reviews. Also, make sure you press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the video series are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily represent those of The Honest Critique and its employees. The following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers. Viewer discretion advised.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode we're recording today. I'm delighted to be joined by Sarit Zehavi, who is the founder and president of Alma Research and Education Center, which is a non-profit, independent research and education center specialized in Israel's security challenges. So thank you so much, Sarit, for taking your time and speaking to us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I will start away with the major news that's have been breaking in most parts of the world. It's about the elimination of several major Hezbollah commanders, especially those overseeing key military operations like the Radwan force in South Lebanon, especially after the October 7 attacks. How does that elimination of the Hezbollah commanders have impacted the group's command structure and operational capacity? If you could explain that.
I think that in a few ways. First, there is a problem of leadership now. So it's not only commanders, it's also the leaders of Hezbollah, especially Hassan Nasrallah himself. Nasrallah created himself or branded himself as a leader that has nobody to replace him, even though the head of the Executive Council of Hezbollah, Hashem Safi Adin, who is actually the head of the services, civilian services given to the population of Hezbollah, was marked as his successor. He never cultivated him like that. And Nasrallah had his own position in Iran and among the supporters of Hezbollah in Lebanon as well. So in Hebrew, we say get into his shoes. I don't know if it's the same in Indian. But the meaning is that to find somebody who can really step in, it's a challenge and it will take time. And, I also have a theory that I cannot prove, that the fact that until now, when we are already in Monday morning, Hezbollah didn't publish a statement of who is going to replace Nasrallah. Maybe it says something about some dilemmas of who to nominate, who should replace him, maybe a little bit of inside a conflict around it. Another problem is how do you communicate? How do you send Radwan? You mentioned the commanders of Radwan. How do you send an invasion of 3,000 or maybe more Radwan brigade military operatives to Israel if all the commanders are killed? And I think in this respect, this capability was taken off. It doesn't mean that there is no capability of infiltration of terrorists in the Israeli northern border. I think the IDF is also prepared for this kind of scenario. But it is a problem to carry out an invasion at the style of what Hamas had done in October 7th at the same scale, once you don't have commanders to communicate with each other. I can tell you that here in Israel, after experiencing really tough 11 months and tough few days, the feeling is that the retaliation until now is not as we evaluated, is less than what we imagined. We have a few hundreds of rockets that are being launched to Israel every day. We'll see how this day will end, but every day. But this is not a few thousand. It's funny that I'm saying it this way, but it's not a few thousand. The evaluations were that much more rockets will be launched at Israel. But at the same time, we are not at the situation yet that we can bring the 60,000 Israelis that were evacuated since these constant fires, since the fear of the invasion. We cannot bring them back yet. And I can tell you that my little girl is not going to school. Schools are closed in the confrontation line. My staff is not coming to work from the office. I'm the only one here because I live nearby. It sees the security situation up north was not solved yet. Okay, there is a long way to go. though we feel that the Hezbollah strategic threat to Israel looks very different after the killing of Nasrallah and the attacks in the Dahia.
And you know Hezbollah for you have been covering Hezbollah for a long time, and I wanted to ask you this question that we have seen decapitation of other terror groups as well in the past, whether it's Al Qaeda, whether it's ISIS. How much impact not having a leader right now would have on Hezbollah? We of course have heard rumors that it might be Hashim Saifuddin who might be his probable successor, but right now there is not a clear picture, as you were saying. Does the arsenal that Hezbollah has, or the structure that organization has crumbles when Nasrallah is not there?
So clearly it is not an isolated incident. Taking off Nasrallah, if this is the only thing we would have done, it wouldn't be enough to even get us closer to solving the problem. The fact that Nasrallah was killed with more leaders, with more commanders, that at the same time there were the pagers that exploded, and you got 3,000 military operatives of Hezbollah that were injured, meaning that they cannot launch rockets and they cannot function as commanders. The fact that they cannot communicate, they are afraid to communicate, and most important, the fact that the IDF is bombing the launchers and the rockets of Hezbollah, all of that together create a true change. Taking off Nasrallah is meaningful and important, but it cannot be by itself the solution to the problem. It's going to pose a lot of problems to Hezbollah, but remember, Hezbollah is a system. Nasrallah is a symbol. Nasrallah is, as I've said, it's a mythical leader, but at the same time, there was a system that was built of a state, and to completely eliminate the state of Hezbollah as a terrorist state, this is something that needs a little bit more time, and it's not just in the hands of Nasrallah. I think that one of the achievements around the killing of Nasrallah is doubting the relationship with Iran, because I think the Iranians as well needs to recalculate what do they truly want from the Lebanese Hezbollah and what do they truly want to achieve from the Lebanese Hezbollah. And we will see along the way how dedicated the Ayatollahs of Iran are to rearming Hezbollah and with all these strategic weapons that are now being destroyed. This is a true question for me. I think Lebanon was the most comfortable arena for the Ayatollahs to establish a prominent presence of a proxy of the leading, Hezbollah was the leading proxy of Iran. Yemen and Syria cannot completely replace that. They are not as comfortable as Hezbollah. But we will see how the killing of Nasrallah will impact this relationship. This is a true question that we are now examining here.
And while we talk about this, I just want to bring the Iranian perspective into this. Nasrallah has been one of their closest and one of the most strongest allies for Iran in the last 4 decades. Has Iran not prepared for this, or they haven't prepared an action at a point of time where not only Nasrallah, but also a lot of the commanders around him were eliminated? Did Iran actually prepare for the successor, or at a situation when Nasrallah might not be there in the organization? Did they prepare about it?
Wow, I don't know whether they prepared. I can tell you that the system works based on the shura. Shura is a council in Arabic, and they are the one who are choosing the next leader. The shura is composed of heads of different councils in Hezbollah, like the judicial council, the political council, the executive council that I've mentioned, and the jihadi council, which is the military wing of Hezbollah. The problem is that the head of the jihadi council is also dead, whoever he was, whether it was Ibrahim Wakil or Fuad Shukr. And also Ali Karki, who was the head of the Southern Front, also was killed. And among the political leaders of Hezbollah, there is now a debate. So I'm not sure they cultivated anybody at the same position. Maybe they will in the future. You know, Israelis are well experienced with fighting terror and killing terrorists around the globe and during the many years and decades. And we saw that everybody has somebody else to replace him eventually. That's why I've said that it's a combination of a few achievements together that created the impact that we see now. And I believe that the impact will grow within the next few days or weeks. The loss of Nasrallah is mainly on the psychological level with regard to how they view the Israelis, how they view our decisiveness to protect ourselves and to find any terrorist that is threatening to destroy us. I think this was a very important message to the Ayatollahs of Iran and to the other proxies in the Middle East, that we can get there. And Nasrallah was hiding in the bunker in the past 18 years. He hardly appeared in public. He was really afraid for his life, and nobody believed that Israel will be able to find him tens of meters underground beneath buildings in a populated areas. That's why I think it's a huge achievement also on the psychological level, in the message that we send to our enemies, and also on the practical level, they miss him. They miss the person who will come and unite them together around the cause which is destroying the state of Israel.
And if I can quickly cover one question about Lebanon before I move on to Israel's strategies, looking at how southern Lebanon looks at, do you feel the ethnic tensions that are between, because we have seen how celebratory mode it was for a lot of the Druze community and a lot of Sunni community as well after the death of Nasrallah, that the ethnic tension might flare up in Lebanon after the death of Nasrallah?
I think this is definitely an option. We have seen a little bit of clashes here and there between Sunnis and Shiites. In Lebanon, everybody's armed this way or another in light arms. Not like Hezbollah, but in light arms. And it is an option. I don't want to confuse hope to an option, because I am not sure that the opponents of Hezbollah are strong enough, and I'm not sure that Hezbollah itself is weak enough. We will never know in advance when we will get to this point. It will always surprise us, like popular appraisals always surprise researchers and intelligence agencies. I'm not intelligence, but I definitely rely on my intelligence experience. You can never predict what will cause it to explode, but I think that if this will happen this time, there is something good in this to the future of Lebanon, because Hezbollah in the past decades was truly busy in destroying the state of Lebanon, not in building it. And I think that if the opponents of Hezbollah will be strong enough to fight it, it can bring us a change, but the change would last a long time. It's not a quick solution. It's in the tempo of the Middle East. It can take a few years until we'll see stability in Lebanon, if this will deteriorate to a civil war.
And I know I want to start with a very hypothetical question, but how long will it take for the IDF to actually make the situation like what is with Hamas right now, that we see barely any rockets being fired at Israel from Gaza? So how long does that take to happen so that the communities can actually move back to the northern border? Or at least there's some amount of normalcy where we don't see rockets being fired from Lebanon?
First, we see a lot of rockets fired from Lebanon all the time, including just 15 minutes before we started, to one of the main cities here, actually. I think that what happened in Gaza, it's a very good example to the fact that to completely destroy the terrorist capabilities is very complicated. And that's why 3 things are needed here. One is side by side with the offense is defense. Offense, it's fine, but you cannot keep our reservists drafted forever. And Israelis always strive to end the wars as quickly as possible. This has already gone too long. But in order to do so, we need you cannot create a vacuum. We need somebody to replace the terrorist organization. In Gaza, it is not happening, and it's a problem. In Lebanon, there is much more hope that it will happen because everything we just discussed. And second, you need a diplomatic arrangement, which again, in Gaza, this is not happening because there is no threat to Hamas. There is no alternative to Hamas. So they don't care to destroy Gaza and continue to live in the tunnels. In Lebanon, there is much more hope that there will be a diplomatic arrangement. Yet, we don't have illusions, and we understand the diplomatic arrangement, the way we want it, need to be, which is an effective diplomatic arrangement, which will prevent Hezbollah from recovering, will be signed only in a situation that Hezbollah is weak enough, that Hezbollah has no other choice, that Hezbollah feels threatened, and that Israel had enough military achievement. We are not there yet because, as I've said, rockets are being launched in a few hundreds every day, but we are definitely on the right track. And many Israelis here believe that in order to, bring the people back home, we will have to clear at least the areas next to the border. I am not sure because the word clearing is very elusive. How do you clear and prevent them from coming back? So at the same time, we will need international pressure on Lebanon to make sure that this time the diplomatic arrangement is different than the previous one.
And while there's still an active front, and I'm sure it might not be as, the operational level has decreased a lot in Gaza, but while there's still an active front in Gaza right now, and opening up another front with Hezbollah, how does that, or what are the probably key military challenges Israel might face to have a multi-front conflict at this point of time?
So I think this is one of the illusions that people outside of Israel don't see. We don't have a full-scale two-fronts war now, okay? And we didn't have one front war in the past year. We were fighting in two fronts since October 8th, basically, in different scales. And the balance changed. At first, it was mainly a maneuver, and most of our forces were in Gaza, while in Lebanon, we kept a low-scale war because Hezbollah didn't stop the fire and refused to negotiate any diplomatic arrangement. But now the balance changed, and there is much more power used in Lebanon, even though we are not inside Lebanon with boots on the ground, it's just the Air Force. And in Gaza, it's not a maneuver anymore. There are less forces in Gaza now, practically raids that the mission is to make sure that Hamas is not recovering rather than taking over areas. The maneuver ended, and IDF said that there is no places to maneuver without putting hostages at risk anymore. And we will have, as I've said, we will have to progress towards a diplomatic arrangement then, along with the constant raids against Hamas. And that's why it enabled us now to look up north and to see what could be done over there. But we are not in a full-scale war in both fronts. We are in different kind of scale in both fronts for a year now. And reservists are drafted in Israel, again, coming and going, that scale or another, in the past year also for the northern fronts, not only in the south.
So I have a couple of last questions, and one of the things I wanted to ask you is about a ground incursion that the IDF has hinted to. So the last time that Israel was in Lebanon was a couple of decades back at least. So a lot of things have changed from that period. So what are the strategic risks that you see in the light of probably a ground incursion right now?
I think Israel is trying, and I hope Israel will try, I'll put it this way, to go in two directions at the same time. First, making sure that the majority of the rockets of Hezbollah were eliminated Today, we saw an announcement of the IDF that this is the case. We still need to understand what does that mean, whether it's 60% or 90%. Remember that at the beginning of the war, we were talking of 65,000 rockets to ranges of about 40 kilometers to 80 kilometers, and 150,000 mortars that are for very short ranges of 10 kilometers, and about 30,000 more of drones and advanced weapons and precision-guided missiles and anti-tanks, etc., and long-range missiles, etc. So this is a huge arsenal, and we want to make sure that truly it doesn't pose a strategic threat to the state of Israel. And second, which is divided to two parts, is the Rad 1 brigades, which, as I've said, I believe that it can no longer launch an invasion of a few thousands of military operatives, but there is a capability that we will see an infiltration of less than that, a few tens over here, over there, and this is a problem if you bring the people to live back next to the border, because next to the border, it's literally next to the border. It's meters away from the border, including kindergartens, which are meters away from the border. The second part of the issue of the ground infiltration to Israel is the underground infrastructure. And I think this is why Israel is talking about entering ground forces into Lebanon, because not all the tunnels could be destroyed from the air. And we don't know what's hidden inside these tunnels. And it's very important to take off these tunnels and to block these tunnels, at least in the areas next to the border, so we will not be surprised if somebody is trying to carry out an infiltration below the ground and pop out next to the border. Doesn't matter if it's in the Israeli side or the Lebanese side, but we will have zero time for alert and preparations to defend our communities. I think this is very important, and this is probably the reason why Israelis are talking about ground operation. Yet I'm not sure it will happen. We, as like the rest of the world, we are here waiting to see what would be the decisions and how much support we're going to get from the Americans around it.
And one of the things that has, of course, been a major challenge to Israel is the international support. Especially, we have seen in the last few months there has been an attempt to arms embargo Israel, and we have seen now an incoming election season in US, and that there is also a sudden change. So how does that impact an operation in Lebanon right now? Because one of the things that we have seen in Gaza was flattening the ground before a ground incursion. So does Israel's precision strike still continues, or it continues with a little bit of caution, looking at what the international community...
Look, in both fronts, we are dealing with terrorist organizations that hide their missiles and rockets below the people's beds. And you've seen that in the tunnel in Gaza, where the 6 hostages were murdered, the opening was in a children's bedroom. And so this is the result of what these terrorist organizations are doing, and they are part of the societies that they are operating within. They are not occupiers of these societies. They are part of these societies. They are mobilizing their military operatives from among these societies that truly believe in this radical ideology. I'm sorry that I'm saying it this way, and I wish this was not the case. Yet, of course, Israel should not and would not target civilians as they are. And you could see specifically in Lebanon, it was very clear from the videos that came out of South Lebanon in the past week that once these warehouses are attacked, the rockets are being automatically launched and they hit the Lebanese. They are killing the Lebanese who are living nearby. And that's the damage that is created once these rockets are stored in populated areas. Yet, I think that the terrain in South Lebanon is different than in Gaza. And here, there is an advantage. First, IDF called, in both fronts, IDF called them to leave, but Lebanon is less crowded. The Lebanese have where to go, and they did evacuate. You saw traffics from South Lebanon up to the north. We saw them arrive into northern Lebanon. Some even crossed into Syria. And this is a very good trend. I hope it will continue. I hope the South Lebanese will understand that for their own safety, they should leave the areas where Hezbollah stored its rockets and excavated its tunnels. And that way we will see less collateral damage. I must say that the villages next to the border with Israel are empty, not from the past 10 days. They are empty from the past 10 months. Since there was war and they were attacked during the past 10 months because there was shooting from these villages into Israel by Hezbollah. So I truly hope that we will see less civilians getting killed in the Lebanese side if there will be a ground invasion of the IDF or ground operation. I don't think it would be, massive towards many kilometers into Lebanon. I don't think this is our interest or our plan. But again, when a terrorist organization is hiding its munition inside the villages and an army with all its power and stress is entering into these areas, if people decide to stay there in the war zone, they can get killed. It is dangerous. And I want to use this platform to call them to evacuate because we have no interest that they will get killed. Because as you said yourself, once they are getting killed, we are being criticized, even though, again, we didn't do it deliberately. So we want them to get out of there for their own sake. The damages are big. War is not a picnic. We didn't initiate this war. We didn't want this war. Israelis dream on peace with Lebanon. We would love to have civilian initiatives with the Lebanese, whether it's around culture or finance or energy or merchandise or agriculture. This is just part of the topics that I can think of that we can do together. But unfortunately, the Lebanese that are supporting Hezbollah were preparing for war, not for peace in the past few decades.
One of them is actually, if you have seen the Indian news, it's fascinating because there are some Shia groups which came out to protest when Nasrallah was killed. And through you, I wanted you to explain for our Indian audience a little bit about who Nasrallah was, because in fact, end of the day, when we see a lot of foreign media as well, especially newspapers, they have also somewhere down the line not portrayed the figure of that amount of terror that he caused among Israelis and killing American citizens as well. So if you could, before we let you go, explain who Nasrallah was and why the killing is very important actually at this point of time.
Yes, of course. Let's say a few words about this person and his experience. Nasrallah was born in Beirut. He was 64 years old. That's why he had, the anticipation was that he will have more years. He was not old like the supreme leader of Iran. His family originally is from Bazuria, which is a town in South Lebanon, and he's the eldest out of 9 brothers. He was a terrorist. In a minute, I'll get to all the details. He had 4 children. The elder one was killed by the IDF in September 1997, and he had 2 more sons and 1 daughter. One of them was seen, by the way, in the videos that came out of Lebanon in the past week. Nasrallah was truly a religious person. He truly believed in the radical ideology of Islam. He was well known with his long speeches. He was a very good speaker. If we wanted to follow him, we had to listen to his 45 2-hour speeches to understand what he's saying. He used to use this platform to threaten the Israelis. We defined him as a Marxist and paranoid because he was afraid to go out since 2006. He was afraid. All his speeches to his people were from a big screen from his bunker. He oppressed any voice of resistance to his people very brutally. He didn't have any tolerance to any public criticism against him and against the Hezbollah from his own Shiite base. He cultivated his image as the leader, as an undermined leader. He was very centralist, and he didn't consult too much the people around him. Were very few people. They were killed with him. Very few people that he used to consult with and he used to make decisions with. He was highly intelligent, and practically the decision-making process of the organization were in the hands of Nasrallah and his most closest loyals and people who are with him at the same area. He had very close relationship with the Iranians. He knew their language, I'll put it this way. And you know, in Syria, for example, in the end of the civil war, you could see posters that would position Nasrallah at the same place with Qasem Soleimani and with Bashar Assad, like they fought together against the rebels of Syria. He was very, very suspicious and very, very careful. He called his own people not to use the cell phones because he was very careful, and then they were injured by the beepers. And I think that's about that. But I truly want to emphasize, because what you see, for example, in Iran, that the sons of the Ayatollahs are celebrating with alcohol in the West, and I don't know, you see less and less loyalty, truly loyalty to the ideology, and a lot of corruption. Nasrallah, I can't talk about all the military operatives of Hezbollah, but Nasrallah himself was truly loyal to the radical ideology of loyalty to the supreme leader of Iran, loyalty to the values of the revolution. And this is how he led the organization. I think that he was, in the eyes of the Iranians, he was almost a partner. Not a partner, but almost a partner, like the most senior CEO. And he earned that because he was truly intelligent, truly loyal to the ideology itself, and very, very strong with how he handled the organization, how he handled Hezbollah.
Well, that's all the question that I had, and I think a lot of people who will watch this will understand who Nasrallah was and why, and what actually this means for Israelis for him to be eliminated right now. So thank you so much.
He was, maybe I should add, he was responsible. He was taking part in terrorist activity for many, many years. Okay, he was responsible to the death of many Israelis, many Americans since the 80s. He replaced Moussaoui after his killing in the end of the 90s in 1990. I don't have the exact date, but in the 90s. And he's very well experienced with terror. And that's why it was very important to kill him, to send a message to any terrorist that his life is not going to be long. And Israel will not tolerate with the existence of terrorists that are threatening Israel and actually have experience in killing Israelis.
Well, that sends out a message of why it was important. But thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.